Welcome back. This weekend, we're wrapping up Men's Mental Health Month, and we brought on some therapists to help Black and brown men find healthy ways to cope with anger, body dysmorphia, men's self-care. And this Self-Care Saturday, one therapist explains what it means to show up as one's true self and being vulnerable. Dr. Damon Pryor, thank you so much for joining us for Self-Care Saturday.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are happy to have you with us. Welcome to BNC. So we've really enjoyed this series for men this month, and for men in general. We know it's not easy showing up as one's true self. That, tie that in with being a Black man, and the culture teaches you that you got to always be hard. But why is it so important for us to show up as our true self?
Well, it's so important for us to show up as our true self because we can't be happy, right? We can't have joy. These conversations and comments around Black boy joy and all of that stuff is wonderful. But if you're not being genuine, if you're not being authentic, if you're not connecting with your core values, then you can't really find that happiness. And moreover, if you go to therapy, if you go to counseling, if you go to, pastoral care, any of those kind of self-care things, you're not going to get the support that you actually need.
And what does it mean to show up as one's true self?
Well, that part is a little bit subjective, right? What it means is being really kind of authentic to your energy, right? Your being, right? So if you are, a Black man who likes country music and hardcore rock, like that's what you're listening to, right? If you are, if you're vegan, if you're any of those things that we tend to shy down on, I tend to think about vegetarianism, right? Because we're you don't I'm a country at my roots, and there's a lot of so you don't eat meat. Right? But if that's who you are, that's who you're being, right? And oftentimes we're not able to be that person, right? We have to dial it back some, even in our workplaces, right? We tone back our kind of core energy so that way we can fit in, and we shift ourselves to a certain extent, and we shift into these versions of ourselves that don't encompass everything we enjoy, everything that makes us happy, and that limits our ability to be content, our ability to feel connected. So that's kind of what it means, is to embody those core values you have.
And Dr. Pryor, why is it that men in general, and Black men and brown men, struggle with doing that?
Well, I think we all struggle as people of color, but I think in particular Black men, because we get a lot of messages from a lot of places, right? The messages we get from our entertainment is that we are, that we are thugs, that we are overly promiscuous, that we're hypersexual, and then we get messages from our own people that we're horrible fathers, we're not. That Black men ain't, we ain't anything, and things like that. And so, we get those messages from the people who we're supposed to feel connected to, and that deadbeat fathers, and we get put down as hashtags to the fathers that actually show up for their kids. We end up on TikTok and all these things, and so we get all these messages, that are extra and additional to just the primary culture, and it's hard to try not to become something to dispel those stereotypes, to dispel those myths, right? So we're trying to oftentimes we're trying to live down an image or live up to one, because we're told that's what Black masculinity is, and we either want to break that stigma or we embody that to feel closer to our identity.
Yeah, we got to break that stigma. Well, you know what, Dr. Pryor, I'm also reminded of the white football player who came out as gay this week. That's an example of being your true self as a man, but it takes some level of vulnerability to do that. Talk about that, because men and Black men in general aren't always willing to show that they're vulnerable.
Yes. Well, part of why men, and in particularly Black men, aren't able to do that, and it's not that they're able, there's a lot of hurdles, right? We're all capable of doing it, but these hurdles we're not trained for. Men aren't trained to go over some emotional hurdles, right? We're really trained to talk about anger and joy, right? We're not given the whole gamut of emotions. And so it's hard to be vulnerable because we, one, don't know all the feelings that we're feeling. We don't know all the things that are going through our body. We don't have the language. All those things make it tough because men are kind of taught to be this holding place and this mirror to just hold everything, and they don't necessarily give it anywhere, right? And they're taught that if they give it places, they're not going to be able to provide and hold up to the standards that are needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to be able to just be vulnerable with whoever it is that you know, because you never know how your story is going to help someone else. Well, I want to ask you, lastly, what are your recommendations and what's your self-care and mental health tip for the week for our men as we wrap up this mental health month?
So, first, my recommendations are really this: find your community that you can, connect with and be open with. And there's no shame in having a therapist. I think it can be helpful to have someone that looks like you, which could be a challenge for Black men. But overall, like, having someone to talk to it's just helpful, where you can, essentially have a paid friend who can get in trouble for telling your secrets, right?
Yeah.
And then I think my mental health tip for the weekend is something that I like to say to all my adults and really remind them, especially my Black men, is don't be afraid to play. And what I mean by play is go do those things that we consider trivial and don't have time, right? Like, go play basketball, go get that game of spades, go paint that picture, go make that music. Like, don't push yourself to do all the work all the time. They're just getting out there and, get into that play to help reduce some of those tensions.
And James, I know this was about Black men, but myself, I took that advice and got my own therapist, letting somebody get all in my business. But sometimes you got to, because they're there to help. But one of the things he said is making sure we get those activities in, play basketball, and you got NBA news coming up.
NBA news, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Portland Trail Blazers head coach